So Daniel, you're a podcast host, a best-selling author, international speaker, and a successful entrepreneur. You've also been featured in Forbes, Entrepreneur Magazine, and appeared on Fox, CNN, CBS. You've written multiple books, like I said, and your podcast is incredible. I've listened to, I think, 4 or 5 episodes now. And as I was just saying to you offline, your energy and the way that you communicate is something that I aspire to one day be able to just be so engaging and really inspiring with your delivery. So I'm excited for our audience to get to listen to you today. And also I'm just excited to be on the receiving end of the conversation, which is going to be incredible. But with all of that incredible stuff you've achieved thus far, that wasn't just given to you. So I'd love to hear how you climbed from the bottom, or your rock bottom, to creating your dream life today. And I'd love to share, I guess, what that journey's been like.
Well, again, thank you for having me. Really appreciate the opportunity to speak to you all and to share a little bit of my journey. It's really interesting that when we realize that by listening to someone else, you can take advantage of the fact that they've gone through a load of stuff and not have to go through it yourself. A big part of my journey has really been mentorship and listening to others, whether it's through a podcast like this, through a YouTube channel, through books. There's so much wealth of experience that's available that we don't have to go through the pain ourselves. So I'm glad for the opportunity to share my story so people can learn from it. So, it was an accident. That's how I got here. I didn't. It was a glorious accident. Now, there's no such thing as accidents. You know what I mean? I didn't plan it, right? I was just like, oh, I'm going to concoct a divine plan for me to live my best life. No, I literally, this whole journey that we're on right now, although for the most part it started in my teens, I was reading books like Think and Grow Rich when I was a teenager. I was studying books like Psycho-Cybernetics, ordering tapes from Nightingale Conant. So I made my first million when I was 19. I promptly lost it. I was like, oh, I'm fine. Oh, gonna go do it again. Did it again. And then lost everything a second time. The second time, bro, I hit rock bottom because I became so caught up in this identity of being, number one, the guy who knew it all, number two, the young upstart success, number three, the guy who couldn't get knocked down. And here I was looking at the abysmal, decimated pieces of those illusions I was holding being brought. And I was like, there's nothing more for me. And I wanted to check out. The only reason why I didn't actually go through with the suicide attempt is because I was so beat down by those experiences that I literally thought, if I try and do this with the loserville that I'm in right now, I'm going to cock that up. And I couldn't be the loser who couldn't even kill themselves on top of everything else. And so I set off on the journey that leads to where we are today. And the journey was be less of a loser so that I can commit suicide.
That was the motivator behind it.
And that was the motivator. And that's why I say complete accident. I wasn't like, I'm going to go and better myself so I can win at life. I'm like, no, I was obsessed for years, obsessed with understanding what was wrong, what I'd messed up, what I didn't understand, where I'd been lied to, like where the holes were with the system, so that when I go through with this suicide attempt, it's perfect and I fade to black. I didn't want a big pomp and parade. I didn't want someone to have to cut me down from somewhere. I didn't want any drama. I wasn't going to even do a suicide note. I was just going to just bail out and just.
And so prior to your, I guess, earning $1 million at 19 and having it crumble and then doing it again, up until that point, had you ever sort of struggled with confidence or mental health issues? So it was really a response to having those 2 failed business attempts that sort of, yeah, right. Yeah. I mean, I was diagnosed with Asperger's when I was 27. And the crazy thing is that I truly believe it was my Asperger's that saved me, because I don't have the capacity to make impulse decisions. I can't do impulse decisions. I literally don't have the wiring for it. And so I sat there. I was like, okay, I'm going to do this thing. Very calm. It wasn't, oh my God, I don't want to kill myself. I was really calm. Like, okay, cool. Logically, this is the best thing for me to do, just to not be here anymore. And I ran through my options and none of them made any sense as being something I could pull off. And that's literally because of the way that my brain works, being an autistic brain. And that's what happened. It's insane. Just to even touch on Asperger's. So Asperger's, from my understanding, is like intellectually, like logically and rationally, everything fires. It's more like social cues and emotional cues where there's a bit of a disparity. Is that correct? Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. So we've got some of the wiring mix, and it's apparent for different people in different ways. But certain of the wiring for those social interactions don't exist naturally. And so they either have to be hardwired through practice, or like me, I studied social dynamics. That's how I got over my social anxiety that I had for years. And I understand the systems and structures, and those systems and structures reduce my anxiety. And then the way that I hack the system is I only really hang out with people that I connect with at a heart and soul level. But I've got the structure that stops me having the anxiety so that I can find my tribe.
That's
and then
awesome. So when you found out that diagnosis at 27, was that like a shock to you, or how did that impact you or influence you?
Oh, even thinking about it now, I just feel the lightness that just came. Because I was suffering with severe social anxiety, severe general, having insomnia that would last for periods. And it was actually a particularly rough experience of insomnia that sent me off to the doctors to try and get sleeping tablets. He gives me the sleeping tablets. They don't work. He sends me off to go speak to a therapist. The therapist he sends me to, Dr. Helen McEwen. Thank you, Dr. Helen. Always shout her out. Love her to bits. Happened to be a cognitive behavioral therapist that specialized in working with adults with autism. Again, completely, she just happened to be the person that got the call and happened to be someone that specialized in that. Saw what was really going on. Wasn't that I had sleep issues. It was my nervous system was off because I was a neurodivergent person who was unaware, operating in a neurotypical world and suffering from anxiety as a result.
It's crazy how the world sort of points you in the right direction if you're open to looking and get receiving that feedback. It all seems to fall into place. It's funny for me when I really tune into that sort of stuff and things start happening. I'll go, I wish I did this all the time. Obviously, my mood and emotion can sometimes distract me and I can get in my head a lot. But when things are going well, I'm like, all I got to do is just keep this up, keep being open to opportunity and sort of projecting what I want in my life, and it starts to happen. But obviously, we know that life can be challenging. But one of the next steps for you, like after that diagnosis, so 19 and then you made another business and then you went through a couple of rough years, really trying to figure out how you could not mess up suicide. Within that process, what changed? Because you're still here today, you're thriving.
Yeah. So, I mean, no shade at TEDx, just in case they let me do another one. But I actually did a TEDx, I recorded a TEDx that tells this whole story and it speaks about this whole thing. But the title, it doesn't look like they really agreed with the title. So they're like, nah, we're not publishing this. So who cares? We're ripping the audio. I'm popping it on the podcast. So we're still going to share the story. And I actually decided today on the 13th of May that my next film project, we're going to build a whole film around this whole concept anyway. But, you know, when we look at who we are as humans, right? We've got our physical body that moves through time and space, right? Our
Meat suit.
But everyone's familiar with the phrase, meat suit. Everyone's familiar with the phrase mind over matter, right? It's a scientific fact that our mind has an impact on our physical reality. A mum in a crazy situation gets superhuman strength, rips at the door of a car. Like, your ability to move through time and space can literally change depending on the stories that you hold in your mind. Everything that we experience in our world began as a vision in the mind, right? We got mind into matter. But it's also a fact that we can only think to the level of our current emotional state. The thoughts going on in my brain now are limited to the emotions that I have the capacity for and that I'm feeling in the moment. So we see that there's this sort of downward trickle effect from the emotions into the thoughts, into the actions and behaviors that become the reality. Right. So, like I said to you, I didn't sit there and say, I want to choose life. There was no point in the journey that was like, I choose life now. I woke up one morning, I think it was April 2015. I just got back from Thailand, had an amazing trip with my cousins. The time that I was there, the business that I then built up, I've made over 100 grand over that time that I was away. I'd taken one phone call with Joe, my assistant. I'd lived my best life. I was in a beautiful home in Highgate. I had fancy stuff, but also great connections with my family. I was working out and feeling good in my body, great friendships. Everything was just working. And I realized, oh my God, like I'm actually enjoying my life. And I hadn't been in the dark place for a long time. And even when the dark place tried to rise up, I was like, yeah, I'm good. Like I was unconscious. I'd become unconsciously competent in my ability to live life on my own terms. And tracking back the journey to that is now what my book, that one here, Stepping Beyond Intention, is what that puppy's all about. It goes through that whole journey and the 4-step process I actually built off the back of it. But all of that to say that the thoughts had to have changed. Otherwise, my environment could have changed because my unconscious habits and behaviors wouldn't have changed, which means that my emotional state had to have changed. But what leads to our emotional state? Our emotional state is impacted by our environment. And here's the thing. For a couple of years, all I was doing was obsessively reading books, listening to tapes, having conversations and having discussions purely about this kind of stuff: personal development, spirituality, evolution of consciousness, behavioral patterns, mindset. I taught myself to transliterate Arabic and Hebrew and all this kind of stuff. So I pummeled my brain and accidentally reprogrammed it to choose life.
It's such... I can relate to that story so much because that's exactly the path that I went down. It was more so... I didn't necessarily, the same as you, choose life, but I made a decision that I just didn't want to hate myself anymore. Whatever that looked like, and books, podcasts, audios, and then you do wake up one day and you're like, I'm actually proud of who I am, and it's such a phenomenal experience. And I don't know whether you can relate, Daniel. I'm sure you probably can. When I talk about how I used to think, act, and behave 8 years ago when I was really not liking who I was, it's almost like I'm so disassociated from that version of who I was, it's laughable. But when I was going through it, it was the most painful experience ever. So when I see men and people who are going through turmoil, trauma, pain, I'm like, obviously I can't always understand what you're going through, but there can be, light at the end of the tunnel. There is another way. You spoke about the 4 steps in the book there. Is that related to the Beyond the Intention paradigm? Is that...
Yep. The Beyond the Intention paradigm, that book breaks down the paradigm, how it works, why it works, where the steps came from, stories of it playing out, for someone, my journey. That's
just
what it's about.
Take it back a second, the environment. I'm massive on shifting your environment because we can all read a book, we can all set a goal, but if you're hanging around a group of people that are doing the opposite to that, you're generally going to fall back into that pattern. And so for anyone who's wanting to improve themselves, be happier, be fitter, I'm like, change your environment. It may be hard. You may not know where to go. They may not even want to hang out with you right now. But what would from your experience or even your advice, what would you give to someone who needs to change their environment to grow into the person that they need to be?
Unless you really want it, you're not going to do the work anyway. So don't bother trying. Because the frustration of you trying and the failure of trying is just going to double your disappointment and make you even more miserable. So if you don't want to be even more miserable, only go for it if you really want it. And here's the thing. It's okay for you not to want it. Some of us are so deeply programmed into the despair that that's who we are. And if we just gave ourselves permission to do that, then that actually could give you the space to want to be something different. But if you're resisting who you are, you're going to hit a brick wall. So the thing is, wanting it enough, but wanting it because you want to be better, not because you don't like who you are. It's about wanting to grow, being desirous of growth. When you are desirous of growth, there's this weird thing that happens because growth is our natural order. When we actually desire, when it's actually burning within us to want to grow, then the challenges, the road bumps, the speed humps, all of the things that will get in your way for growth tend to either be dissolved or easily navigated because you'll have the momentum to go through it. One of the illusions I hear people talk about is, getting to the end or getting over it. The journey doesn't stop. The growth doesn't end. I don't heal myself completely magically of depressive thoughts. What happens is that my capacity to navigate those thoughts shifts wildly. And when they show up, it's like, oh, that again. And I can navigate it. Life doesn't get easier. We get stronger. That's the key. But that strength has to be based on a desire to grow, not a desire not to be who you are, because that's just going to keep you locked in more of who you are and keep you living the same life. Such a good point.
I think from my experience, we are trying to grow out of who we are, but I think we can never really avoid that. It is just how can we be stronger to deal with the challenges that, and ultimately, as you say, when we're growing, we're bringing those challenges into our life. It's there to test us to see how strong we can be. So I think it's very important to, when you do hit a road bump or you do hit that obstacle, what kind of reps do I need to do in order to be able to work through this, because it's all about sets and reps. And sometimes you're fatigued, and sometimes you're feeling like you've just come off a 3-day, 3 rest days, and you're feeling stronger than ever. So moving forward as well, like after you got to that point and you started realizing, hey, I'm just living my best life now, I'm super, super happy. What sort of then led you into the space that you're in now and really helped you continue to move forward and grow? Like, what's the burning desire now?
I recognize that growth is a natural order of things. And if I'm not growing, I'm dying. And so I'm always looking to improve. I never accept or believe that I know everything. Anytime I go into conversation, come into this podcast, I'm not coming to teach. I'm coming to learn from the experience. I'm coming to grow in the space. And I do my best to go through all of my things. My son's 18 months old on Sunday coming. And I don't look at him as someone that I need to show. I'm looking at him as someone that I get to co-create more life with. It just so happens that I've got some pieces of the puzzle, but not the complete pieces. He's got pieces that I don't even know are possible. And that's how I approach my life. I approach my life at all times looking for, how can I be expanded by it? What can I contribute to it? Not what can I give because I know everything. What can I contribute to?
How did you develop that approach? Because even just the fact that you're saying you're learning from your son, that makes me so happy on the inside. I'm like, this is incredible, because we can learn so much from each other, but it also shows to me that you're an engaged dad. And that's something that I just love more than anything, is the fact that now men are stepping up, and obviously the world's changing, but they're really wanting to be engaged in their children's lives and even in their partners' lives.
I think humility came for me in a really rough way. Like, my humble pie was stuffed down my throat until I nearly choked. And it was a big part of my journey, because one of the things I came to realize about why I messed up so many times when I was younger is because I was running around thinking I was Johnny Big Socks that knew everything. And that's what led ultimately to losing everything twice, not being open to counsel. So, I spend 6 figures a year on my personal development. One thing that I invested in last year alone was $100,000, like just one of the things that I invested in for myself. I continue to do that. And, just seeing the results that come from being open to what life can give you if you just actually pay attention. It's like, when something works, you do more of it. And so that led me to continue that journey of growing. And I think there was a moment when I specifically made the conscious choice to go in to learn a lot from my son, Ethan. And so when I came home from the office once and he waved at me, and now it seems very ordinary, right? But I want you to, anyone who's listening to this, to tell me, do you remember the moment that you learned to wave?
No.
And then I thought even things like, do you remember the moment that you understood what it was to read?
Never.
You probably remember books that you read when you were a kid at school, but the point at which you started to look at these squiggles on a page and assign meaning to them. My wife's Russian, my son's mum, he's Russian. And I decided I refused to be the only person in my house that doesn't speak Russian, so I started to learn Russian. And that was when it really hit me that letters are just squiggles that we've assigned meaning to. If I showed you the letter H, you'd say that's a letter H, it's a H sound. In Cyrillic, it's a N sound, right? What we look at as a P, a P sound, it's a R sound in Russian. And so it's like, but it's just a squiggle, but the squiggle has a completely different meaning. I don't remember when that meaning became a sound that I attributed this understanding and value of. I don't remember it. So I'm looking at Ethan waving. I was like, oh my God. At the time, I think he was about 1 year old or so. I don't remember being 1 year old, let alone being 1 year old and learning whatever I learned at that age. My stepdaughter's 6 and she's got these little crazy things that she does. I don't remember being 6 years old. And yet in that period of time between about his age and about her age is literally when the foundations of who we are being constructed. All of the programs, all of the patterns, all of the foundations are being built at that time. And yet very few of us can remember the points of inception of some of these ideas that literally become the habits and behaviors that we exhibit as adults. So when someone comes to me and is a bit of a douche, speaking from their pain body, I don't know what experience happened to them where they thought it was okay. When someone expresses hate, whether it's for somebody's race, somebody's religion, somebody's gender choices or sexuality choices, I don't know what the thing was. My nephew was at school the other day, and apparently my nephew's 9, KK's 9, and he came home and told him, apparently one of the kids at school came to him and said, well, at least I'm not black. A 9-year-old is spewing hate. Now, that 9-year-old is just coming off the back of his analytical function building, but that's purely what they picked up from whatever their living situation is, that they then began to accept as being correct behavior. They probably don't even know that there's something wrong with what they were doing. They're just spewing what they're spewing. And yet that person in 20 years' time, in 30 years' time, what are they going to be doing? What are they going to be showing in the world? And so it gave me a sense of compassion for the people around me, and also gave me a level of respect for what's going on with my inputs, because every single input, every single environment that I'm in is either supporting those programs that were built when I was a kid or disrupting them. And all of these people that are having these experiences, this kid who was racist to my nephew, I've learned something from him too. Every single one of these experiences gives me the opportunity to challenge, to engage, to support, or to disrupt what's going on inside of me, which is going to become an outcome, which is going to go back and become more of an experience. And it's just so much to take from. I know I went on a little bit. There's so much to take from our world and from these experiences that can grow us or leave us.
That was powerful to listen to. And I think it feels like you just take responsibility for everything that's coming your way, good, bad, and indifferent, and are able to use that experience, as you said, to better who you are and better your outputs. And for a long period of my life, I was really unaware of all the stuff that I was consuming, from the news to the conversations that I was having with mates at the pub. And I was wondering why I was continuing to walk around really confused, unhappy, unsatisfied, and just lacking, I guess, meaning, for a better word, within my life. And the moment that I started, having conversations with people like yourself or reading books, the input changed, and I started realizing that the conversations that I was having was impacting my moods, was impacting my emotions, and ultimately impacting my output. And while I'm still not perfect at it, I do still, I'm a bit of a, I don't like saying a yes man, but I love to experience new things. And often I might find myself at events or meeting with people for coffee where I might, as much as I can learn from it, I wish I was spending time in another situation with maybe someone who is going to really stretch me and really challenge me. And that's one thing that I'm really focused on moving forward, is being more intentional with that, where my time's going and what the input is. So how important is that to you? I know you briefly just touched on this, but with your environments now, is there a lot of stuff that you look to cut out, or are you just sort of...
I'm ruthless with my environment. Ruthless.
I was going to say, have you noticed any negative impacts as a result of that? Like, have you lost friendships as a result of that, or disappointed people as a result of that?
Well, I mean, first and foremost, if we're not putting ourselves in a position where we're nourished and served, then how can we serve and nourish anyone else? And so somebody may be disappointed, but I'm actually doing us both a service if I'm pulling us out of a situation where we're not serving each other because we're not even being expanded by the situation. That time and energy that we're both putting into this connection is holding us back from something that might expand us. So I'm actually helping us, regardless of how either of us might feel in the short term. There've been situations that I haven't necessarily wanted to walk away from, but I recognize the lack of alignment with where I want to move with my life, which isn't for my benefit, it's for
definitely. So you talk about
benefits.
Alignment.
Does that make sense?
How does that show up for you, and how do you find that? Because alignment's a word that I've heard coming up a heap for a lot of people, and it's something that I probably seek to find. So what does that look like, and how did you establish that in your life?
I think if we look at the breakdown of the word alignment requires 2 points: the thing that we're aligning to and the thing which is being aligned. And a lot of people don't have the thing that they're aligning to because they're not being intentional. They're just running on programs. And so you can't, in my opinion, have alignment without an actual conscious focus that we're moving alignment to. Otherwise, you're not aligned. You're just in flow with whatever. And so it comes down to intentionality. For me, that's what's the life that I want to live? And for me, the life I want to live is how can I be of contribution in a way that serves me, serves those I'm contributing to, makes the world a better place. Not for me now going, hey, I want to make the world a better place, because I feel really good when I'm actually contributing to the world being a better place. So it's selfish, right? I think it's Adam Smith that said it's not from the charity of the baker and the butcher that we get our bread and meat. It's from their own self-interest. Self-interest can exhibit itself healthily in this respect. So when I've got that vision, I'm saying, well, all the parts of me we spoke about, my mental experience, my actions and habits and behaviors, my emotional state, I'm lining those up to support that outcome coming to bear, that life that I want to live coming to bear. So that's what alignment is for me. It's all of me, mind, body, soul, mental, physical, emotional, being lined up with supporting the bringing forth of the outcome.
So do you believe
I've
success is unattainable without intention?
No, people chance upon success. And I think there's a weird Danism that I've got, which is that you've never failed at anything. People say, what do you mean I haven't failed at anything? I didn't get that job. I didn't get into the college I wanted to go to. My business didn't work out. Actually, your unconscious mind, which operates at 10,000 to 10 million times the speed of the conscious mind, never fails as a terminator. But what there is there's a disconnect between what's going on at the unconscious level and what I'm consciously choosing. For me, intentionality is interjecting with what's in the program and consciously being involved in the choice. Your program can be hardwired for success. You can actually be one of those people who chances upon an outcome that happens to feel good for you consciously, that also is what you're programmed with unconsciously. I was successful in staying alive. Wasn't what I wanted to do. And yet I was successful without that intention. I've heard it said that success is getting what you want. We're always getting what we want unconsciously. So I like to tweak it that success is really getting what you want consciously, but to get what I want consciously, I need to be consciously involved. So that requires intentionality, because I'm disrupting the program with what I consciously want rather than flowing successfully into something that I don't want.
For that as well, so you know how you just mentioned some people can be hardwired for success and others not so much. Do you feel that's more when you grow up, some people grow up in wealthier families or entrepreneurial families or sporty families? Do you reckon that sort of is a big indicator as to why some people may be hardwired for certain, levels of success across different areas?
Yeah, but I do want to just quickly bring in like an economic truth to the thing. Like, there's a lot of rich hating right now. Oh, they were born into wealth. The average wealthy family lose it after 3 generations of the person who actually created the wealth. The average, you get the odd that managed to build a dynasty, right, that lasts. But most, it's gone within 3 generations. They say the first one builds it, the second one breaks it, or the third one loses it, or something like that. I don't remember the exact words. So it's really funny that a lot of people are, oh, that person was born with a silver spoon, they're so lucky. Actually, statistically speaking, you are better off as the person creating a dynasty than receiving it, because the probability is that you're the one that's going to be more successful. Now, are there certain advantages to someone that's got wealth? Of course, you've got access to different education, different resources, but access to something doesn't mean that you're going to use it or even use it positively. So when you look at drug addiction, you look at alcoholism, you look at mental health challenges, a lot of those actually exist amongst the families of the wealthy. And yet people are betraying their capacity to actually create by saying, I can't do it because I haven't got the leg up. When the people who've got the leg up actually aren't doing as well as you think they are.
Definitely.
Does that make sense?
Being in the position to create the dynasty obviously means, finances are important to a degree. Is to create the life that you want and to create, I guess, a life full of purpose and passion even. Do you believe financial freedom is a big part of that?
I think it's a great place to be, because you're in a conducive space to create. If you're not thinking about money, then you're good. And it's one of the reasons why, people say, why do you focus on helping people to get rich and be millionaires, Daniel? Blah, blah. It's not the most important thing. It's not. But for years, all I was hearing people say about why they couldn't live their ideal life is that they didn't have enough money. And now for years, I'm seeing people that have got financial freedom able to live their best life, not because of the money, but the money gives them the space to be able to do that. Think about it. The average person who works a 40-hour week, you've got an hour each way to work. That's 50 hours of the week. If that 50 hours was back in your pocket, you could go and be in contribution. You could go and live your best life. You could go and do that hobby. You could go and start a charity or play the instrument or be with your family more. Money's just a tool that makes things easier. And so that's it.
A lot of, you were saying as well just a moment ago, like there's a lot of people hating on the rich at the moment or the wealthy. Why do you feel that is?
Because then they don't have to take responsibility for their life. If the problems in the world are the fault of the rich people, then you're not responsible. You can get away with it. And you can stay the same and not have to do anything because it's Elon Musk's fault, or it's, well, Jeff Bezos is going to space. What about all the hungry children in Africa? Blah, blah, blah. Jeff Bezos isn't as rich as you think he is. Most of his wealth is tied up in shares in Amazon, which are also propping up your pension fund. Right? So his success is your success, which is propping up the stock market, which is holding back the tides of financial cataclysm which will be a mess when it finally kicks in. There was 10 times more toxic debt running around in the world before COVID than in 2008, when the world literally nearly didn't make it. And it's these people who are creating value. Does he treat his workers well? I've heard it said not too well. Yes, and he's just one person. I had the pleasure 2-3 weeks ago. I was on Necker Island, Richard Branson's private island, got to hang out with him, some other very, very successful people who are committed to supporting positive change, who do look after their employees, who do add value, who do pay fair value for things, who do honour and respect the people that they serve as clients and customers. Not everybody's a twat that's a business person. Not everybody's a twat that's rich. And if someone has, like Sir Richard's made, he's got 400 companies, $7 or $8 billion businesses. If he wants to own a private island and play tennis all day, he's earned the right to have a private island and play just. But to say, oh, we need to take all his money to feed the poor or whatever, he's done his part. He's created jobs. Now, again, some people are twats. You get it. Jeff Bezos may be a twat, but these small handful of people who are twats are not an excuse for us to sit at home just pointing angry fingers and not doing anything about changing our own life. That's just a recipe for disaster.
Do you feel that taking responsibility is the biggest thing holding people back from, I guess, creating financial freedom for themselves? What would be a couple of other ones?
One of them. Another one is, I love to say action is the least and the most important thing at the same time. It's the least important thing because by the time we get to the action piece, our mindset's already set, our emotional state's already set, the unconscious mind's already kicked in, and the action's just following on. But without action, we don't get anywhere. So it's the least and the most important thing. So I think action definitely is one. And another thing is being obsessed with one part of the puzzle. One of the things I love to share with people is I've got a catchphrase, stop meditating. But what do you mean stop meditating, Daniel? It changed my life. It's the most important thing in the universe. It's like, well, yes, and if you've got a goal and you just sit and meditate on it all day, is it going to happen? No. And even if it does happen, are you going to be able to enjoy it if you're locked tight in your meditation? No. It's one piece of the puzzle. You can meditate all you want about being successful. If you've got a belief system that doesn't allow you to believe that you're successful, you're not going to be able to see it. If you don't take any action, you're not going to do it. I can sit here in lotus position praying for the love of my life to show up. If I'm just in an ashram in the backwater mountains of India and that person doesn't happen to be there too, even if they walk past the room, but I'm in lotus position, I'm not going to see them because my eyes are closed. I'm in deep prayer and meditation in another dimension. Dear God, I'm in this dimension with you, but where's the love of my life? But I don't leave the dimension. How can I enjoy it? It's like it's ludicrous. So definitely responsibility. Action is the least and most important thing, and don't over rely on any one thing so powerful, to save you.
I remember I was reading that you said don't meditate, and I was like, what? This is absurd. I had that exact same reaction. Yeah.
I said, stop meditating.
And then when
don't meditate.
Yeah, I looked into it further and I was like, I can definitely understand because there's people get so in the motion, they feel like they're doing something, even if they become like personal development junkies where they go to every event, read every book, listen to every podcast, and they're telling you about it.
Yeah.
And you're like, so have you implemented that yet? No. I just need to figure out this next step.
I'm in the river of change.
Yes.
Right. You probably heard that one.
Okay. It's all well and
I'm
good,
on my healing journey.
You've got to take some action now to actually get the next bit of feedback for you because based on our experiences, the people that we get to network with or surround ourselves with, we've all got different skill levels and experience levels. So creating financial freedom, if we were both to go back to 19, Daniel, you're a millionaire at 19. I was far from a millionaire at 19. I still didn't know my ass from my elbow. But if we were to go, okay, let's create financial freedom, this is the roadmap to do it. The journey would look very different for us based on the beliefs, experiences, and everything that we had for that manner. And we're not going to understand what that looks like if we don't just take action. I could have sat there and continued learning about business, reading about business, and getting mentored, but if I didn't take the risk, I never would have gotten there. And I think I'd love to actually know your opinion on this. Do you believe, not everyone, but people who want that financial freedom should have a crack at entrepreneurship or should have a crack at creating their own business?
Not everyone, because a lot of people aren't built for this life, man. I think it's 85% of businesses fail within 5 years or something like that.
Less years.
Yeah, it's a wild thing. And yet everyone's buying a course from a funnel that they saw on Instagram or whatever. Not everyone's built for this life. And if everyone's the chief, then who's there to be the worker, right? Everyone's a boss who's going to get things done. I mean, I love to talk about ending job shaming. There's nothing wrong with having a job. People, I've got my 9 to 5. I've got my job. I'm an entrepreneur, but I've got my 9 to 5. Own your job with pride. Do a job that serves you and serves others and feels good and meets your needs, but do it with pride. Not everyone's an entrepreneur. A lot of people trying to be entrepreneurs, really, you're not. And that's why you're struggling. Or I think I did an article, I don't know if it's been published yet in Entrepreneur, about the 9 to 5 entrepreneur. You just made a job for yourself. And for most of it, it's a job that you don't like and you're not very good at.
I think I sometimes go through this thought process that I wish people would have a crack at business just so they could understand all of the decisions and things that need to be weighed up. Because as a business owner, and I often see people who an employee and they're criticizing everything. And I can understand both perspectives, but when you're running a business, there is a lot of, there is a lot of pressure that people don't understand and think about. So I think to create more empathy, it's like have a crack at it and see just how much is going on that, it's like that iceberg effect.
I see where you're coming from. Walk in my shoes.
Exactly.
Walk in my shoes.
Yes. So to bring more of that empathy. But I really love how you said most people aren't built to be entrepreneurs, and we shouldn't be shaming the 9 to 5 because some people, I've heard Gary Vee say a position 2, an entrepreneur wouldn't be as successful as they are without everyone else. Like it's what drives everything together.
Yeah.
Right. A plane still wouldn't fly if it didn't have an engine, even though the pilot's in control. So everyone sort of fits their role. And I think if we can stop shaming that, everyone will be able to really embrace and thrive in their acquired position. And I think about it or talk about it regularly with men in our community who are unhappy and they're working in a job that isn't fulfilling. They work extremely long hours. The sacrifices are stuff that they don't necessarily want to live with. And I'm like, well, why don't you just literally go work at Macca's? You've got a certain shift and you'll be done at that time. And then you can, spend time with your children, or you can go for the run or do the adventure stuff that you want to do. Why do you feel the pressure to have to keep the status in that role? So I guess, why do you feel that is for a lot of us, that we do want to uphold status and position and be the top dog? Because
some of us give more credibility to the thoughts and opinions of other people than we do for ourselves. I mean, when I reflect back on my dalliance with suicide, it was my obsession with what I believed other people were believing and thinking. And that led me to, thank God, not have the capacity to, but nearly go to take my own life. How many others are burning out to keep up with the Joneses because they need the country club and the this and the that and the that? They don't even really want those things. But because society has given us this lack of conscious connection to what's going on inside of us, we're playing this out. Yeah,
we really need to figure out what we want. And once we get there, it's like solidify those beliefs and build the environment to support us doing that so we don't fall in that trap of keeping up with the Joneses. Daniel, I know you're a busy man, so I want to respect your time. I've got one last question for you before we can find out all your books and the podcast and everything like that. But what does it mean to be a man for you? I'll quickly give you a bit of framing. I ask everyone because, especially in Australia, we've grown up with a stereotypical belief of what it means to be a man, but obviously suicide rates are continuing to grow. So we need to get more people like yourself, well-respected people who are thriving in life and definitely would have given it some thought what it means to be a man, because there's going to be people out there who resonate with it.
I think the idea of what it means to be a man is being challenged in recent years because there is all these discussions going on about gender identity, gender eradication. People, I mean, I can't remember the name of the trans woman who swam in the swimming race and everyone was getting mad because of the thing. So gender is becoming a very, very different thing now. So I don't think being a man now can be locked into this gender thing. Elaine Page became trans man is now Elliot Page. It's new for many of us, right? This wasn't something that was happening a generation ago. And so I think what we're really talking about when we say what's a man is we're looking at, we've got the gender identity, but then we've also got the natural manifestation of masculine, primarily masculine energy. And for me, that's what it really is about. Not so much being a man, but being a healthy expression of the divine masculine and how we show up. And what is that? That's a container. That's the direction. But none of that really matters if it's not playing in harmony with a counterpart energy. That doesn't mean we need a woman. Feminine energy is all around. How am I in relationship to the idea of flow? How am I in relationship to surrender? How am I in relation to intuition? How am I in relation with nature? So it's the container that I am that's dancing with the divine feminine energy that naturally expresses too. And then what I do with that. For me, that gets added to the identity under that of a dad, of a leader, of a brother, of a son, of a husband. But again, all of these are all going to be based on how I show up initially under that guise of a man, which is just a physical manifestation of a naturally occurring container for that.
Thanks for sharing
energy.
that. Where can people find you? So if they want to listen to the podcast, if they want to attend your workshops, see you speak, read your books, give us the rundown.
Mm-hmm. Well, what I've done is I've just been making some notes as we've been talking. I'm going to have my team produce a resource page. So if they go to dreamwithdan.com/man that can, dreamwithdan.com/man that can, I'm going to pop on we've got a program called Beyond Intention Introduction. It's about 90 minutes worth of audio, but walks you through learning my Beyond Intention paradigm. I'm going to put some other little pieces in there as well, a couple of my articles for entrepreneurs, some podcast links and stuff like that. But yeah, and also a link to book a call with us. And when you register for that, it will pop you on the email list. So if anything cool's happening, you'll get to come to it. But dreamwithdan.com/man that can. We'll pop some resources that will support them applying.
Thank you so much for your time, mate. It's been a wonderful chat. And hopefully when I get over to Mexico one day, we can link up.
Sounds like a good one
to
me.
Or if you do come back to the
Brizzy,
Sunshine State that's not so sunny at the moment.
Yeah. We'll see what the weather is first. But thank you, bud. Thank you so much.